The night my son-in-law tried to evict me from my own house. I didn't argue. I pressed play on a recording that changed everything. My daughter's face went pale, the room went silent, and for once, they finally listened. That was only the beginning. The late light slanted through the kitchen blinds, turning the white tile floor of Riverstone Villa a soft amber. I was rinsing a casserole dish, still slick with gravy from Sunday's roast. The dishwasher hummed. The television in the next room mumbled a commercial about car insurance, and somewhere upstairs a phone vibrated against a nightstand. It was the kind of quiet that looks peaceful from the outside, but feels heavy when you're standing in it. My coffee mug sat in the corner, half full, forgotten. My coat was hung on the side hook, again. The main rack had somehow become theirs. Marcus rushed through, jacket half on, Bluetooth in his ear. "Thanks, Mom," he said automatically, not looking up from his phone. I smiled at the back of his head, then at my reflection in the window. That smile didn't quite reach my eyes anymore. A few minutes later, Isolde came in, heels clicking like punctuation marks. She dropped her shopping bags on the counter. "Could you throw another load in the wash since you're home?" she asked, already scrolling on her phone. Her tone was casual, but her words landed like commands. At my age, Anna, I thought, wiping my hands on a towel, you learn to pick your battles. But lately, it felt like the battles were picking me. I'd run closings in a law office for 20 years. I'd signed deeds, drafted contracts, held my own with men who talked too loud. Now I was background noise in my own son's home. Isolde looked up from her screen. "Oh, I almost forgot. Did you ever read that brochure from the assisted living community I left on the table?" I paused, rinsing the sponge. "I told you, I'm not interested in being parked somewhere like an old car." She smiled without warmth. "We just want what's best for you. You don't want to be a burden, right?" Marcus walked back in, sensing tension. "Let's not do this right now," he muttered. But "not now" had become his favorite way to mean never. "Funny," I said softly, "how you can live in a house and still feel like a guest." The room thickened. Even the clock seemed to tick louder. Then Isolde's voice sharpened. "Octavia, you can't just stay here forever and say no to every solution." "This is my son's house," I replied evenly. "I paid half that down payment. I'm not a stray you picked up." Her composure cracked. "If you won't go to a nursing home," she snapped, "pack a bag and get out of my house. Tonight." Marcus froze. "Isolde, come on," he said weakly. But the damage was done. My stomach dropped, then steadied. I looked at her, at the woman who'd married my son and decided kindness was optional. "You don't have to ask twice," I said, setting the dish aside. The sound of the water filled the silence like applause. Upstairs, in what they called the guest room, I pulled my old suitcase from under the bed. The zipper caught where it always did. I folded my clothes neatly, one shirt at a time. Like older women say, you pack your life the same way you lived it, carefully, deliberately. On the dresser sat a jewelry dish holding the small silver key to our first family home. I slipped it into my pocket. "I may be leaving," I whispered, "but I'm not leaving empty-handed." A photo caught my eye. Me and my late husband, standing in front of the first Langford property. I ran my finger along the frame, thinking of all the contracts, the paint colors, the long nights when we dreamed of owning more than one house. I built that life. They just moved in. A soft knock. Amara, my granddaughter, peeked in. "Grandma, where are you going?" "Just taking a little break, baby," I said, forcing a smile. She nodded, trusting me, then vanished down the hall. When I came downstairs, Isolde was pretending to scroll her phone. Marcus lingered by the doorway, guilt pooling in his eyes. "You don't have to walk me out," I told him. "You already did." Outside, the savannah air was cool, the scent of river moss clinging to everything. I pulled my coat tighter. Suitcase handle in hand, the porch light flickered behind me as I stepped into the dark. At the end of the driveway, I saw headlights approaching, soft, steady, and unfamiliar. Not Marcus's car, not anyone's I recognized. I stood still as the beam washed over me, and a strange calm spread through my chest. I thought I was walking out alone. Turns out, my story had other plans. The headlights swept across the driveway like a tide of white light. For a second, I thought it was a neighbor, or maybe a rideshare I hadn't ordered, but when the car stopped, I saw the chrome shine in long frame, too polished, too deliberate, a black limousine, the kind you only see outside hotels downtown. The driver stepped out in a cap and coat, straight-backed, holding a tablet. "Mrs. Langford?" he asked. I hesitated. It had been years since anyone said my name with that kind of respect. "Yes," I said carefully. He smiled, opening the door. "Your ride's been arranged. I was told to pick you up tonight." The porch light caught me in half shadow, behind me. Isolde and Marcus stood by the door, silhouettes in their own house. I didn't turn back right away. I wanted them to see me pause, deliberate, then lift my chin. "Thrown out 1 minute, chauffeured the next," I murmured. Life really did have a wicked sense of humor. I walked to the car, the gravel crunching under my shoes. Isolde's smile slipped when I got in without a single question. Inside smelled of leather and lemon polish. I sat back, watching the reflection of the house fade behind me as the driver pulled away. Savannah's streets opened up. Mossy trees, cobblestones, glowing storefronts. I used to drive this route with my husband in our old Buick, dreaming of putting our name on half these buildings. Now, I was riding past them, remembering. Age doesn't make you smaller. It just teaches you which words are worth saying out loud. "Destination's your old condo, ma'am," the driver said. That caught me off guard. My old condo, the one I'd left when I thought family meant security. "Someone must have given you my address," I said. "Yes, ma'am," he replied simply. I stared out the window, realizing whoever arranged this still saw me as someone worth returning home. When the limo stopped in front of the brick building, I thanked the driver, declining his help with the suitcase. "I've carried heavier things," I said with a smile. Inside, the hallway smelled like wood cleaner and dust. The elevator hummed faintly. A young couple walked past with takeout boxes, barely glancing my way. That's city life. Nobody sees your story, just your shadow. I unlocked the door. The condo looked the same, quiet, a little lonely. But mine, the oak table, the faded rug from Charleston, my old reading chair still near the window. I touched the wall like greeting an old friend. "You ever walk back into a place," I whispered, "and realize you outgrew the version of yourself who left?" I moved through the rooms, turning on lights, straightening frames. Each sound, the click of the switch, the soft hum of heat returning, was proof that I still existed, still capable. The loneliness was sharp, but underneath it was relief. No one sighing behind me, no one correcting how I loaded the dishwasher. Then I remembered the safe. Behind a framed photo of Marcus at 10 years old, it was still there. My fingers found the code easily. Some numbers you never forget. Inside were insurance papers, deeds, and a sealed envelope in my husband's handwriting. For Tavia. My throat tightened. I sat at the kitchen table, tracing the letters of my name before opening it. He wrote about the company, the buildings, the way he wanted Marcus and me to manage things together. He called me the backbone of every deal we ever closed. I could almost hear his voice, steady, kind, certain. The words warmed me and chilled me all at once, because they didn't match what Isolde had told me about ownership. The phone buzzed. An email from Renee Cuthbert. "Our old bookkeeper, Mrs. Langford," it read. "I shouldn't be writing this, but the will I saw years ago isn't the same as what's filed now. Your name was on the older one." My chest tightened. I reread the lines twice, each word like a light flicking on in a dark room. "Folks love to tell older people they misremember," I said to the empty kitchen. "Funny how memory sharpens when money's involved." I scrolled through my contacts until I found Vernon Keller's number. My hand didn't shake. When he answered, his voice was warm, surprised. "Tavia, I was just thinking about you." "I think somebody's been rewriting my husband's will," I said calmly. Silence. Then his tone changed. Steady, lawyer serious. "Tell me everything," he said. I looked around my condo. The quiet now felt like preparation. Not punishment. My husband's letter lay open. Proof and promise both. "If they rewrote my life on paper..." "Vernon," I said softly, "we're going to rewrite it back. If they rewrote my life on paper, Vernon, we're going to rewrite it back." Those words kept echoing in my mind as January rolled in. 2 weeks had passed since that night, and most days began with coffee and quiet talks at Vernon's office. He asked for copies of my husband's letter. Every closing document I still had tucked away. Used to be. I wore cheap suits and big dreams, quick, he joked one afternoon. Now I just wear caution. We'd both learned what time can do to trust. Then, one morning, a shiny envelope appeared in my mailbox. Langford Realty's 10-year growth celebration. The print was gold, the kind used for weddings or victories. My name, though, was small, separated from the founders, labeled special guest. I laughed under my breath. Special. All right. Vernon's words came back to me. If they're rewriting history, it'll be right there on that stage. So I decided to go. Not as a guest, as a witness. The ballroom glowed like a jewel box when I walked in. Polished marble floors, white orchids, champagne bubbling on silver trays. I wore navy silk, simple, sharp, mine. At the check-in table, a young woman squinted at the list. "Oh, you're with the family," she said finally, as if she just located a missing sock. "That's one way to put it," I replied. Her smile faltered. Inside, Savannah's real estate elite gathered like bees around money. Bankers, agents, politicians. People who once needed my signature to close their first deal. The band played soft jazz. The air smelled of perfume and old ambition. I glanced at the seating chart. Marcus and Isolde at the head table under the chandelier. Me tucked near the service doors. That's how it starts, I thought. They move your chair just a little farther each year until you're sitting outside. A few older agents waved. "We don't see you around the office much," one said. I smiled. Apparently, I retired and nobody told me. They laughed, but I saw the awkwardness in their eyes, the kind that says they know something's off, but won't say it out loud. Then the lights dimmed. Marcus walked on stage in a tailored suit, nerves showing at the edges. "Thank you for being part of our journey," he began. Polite, forgettable. Isolde joined him, her smile as rehearsed as her tone. "When we started Langford Realty," she said, "we had nothing but faith and hard work. Not a single mention of my husband, not even me. She called it our young couple's American dream." The audience clapped. My stomach clenched. At my table, someone leaned over. "Didn't you help start all this?" I didn't look up. "You could say that." My voice was calm, but my hand on the napkin shook once before I stilled it. Then came the moment meant to break me. Isolde announced the Marcus Langford Achievement Scholarship, honoring his vision and perseverance. The words sliced clean, no family, no legacy. Just him, just her, just their version. The red light on the camera blinked like an accusation, proof this rewrite would live forever. I stood when the applause started. Not fast, not angry, just steady. Let them think I was tired. I walked out of that ballroom, through the gold-lit hallway, into the muffled quiet of the lobby. Vernon was waiting near the bar, coffee in hand. He didn't ask what happened. "So," he said, "they went with the fairy tale version, huh?" "They did," I replied. "And my son let them..." My voice cracked once, small but real. Vernon nodded, jaw tight. "Feel it tonight. Tomorrow we put it on paper." I breathed in, slow. At my age, you learn to do your crying in the shower, not in lobbies. He smiled at that, sadly, but proud. He opened his briefcase, pulling out a thin folder. "I started digging," he said. Inside were documents, company registrations, signatures, dates that didn't line up. Your husband's name is on the original filings, yours too. What they've got now doesn't match. "If they forged it?" I asked. "That's not just betrayal. Tavia, that's a felony. I felt the blood rush in my ears. The humiliation from that ballroom shifted, solidified into something colder, sharper, proof, purpose. I closed the folder gently. I don't want revenge, Vernon. What I want the truth to have my husband's name on it again. He nodded once. Then we start tonight. Outside, Savannah's winter wind carried the faint sound of music from the ballroom. I straightened my shoulders, walking toward the dark streetlights. Let her have tonight, I said. The next one will be mine. When I called Marcus that Tuesday, my voice was soft enough to sound like surrender. I'd like one proper family dinner, I said. Just the three of us. No kids, no guests. He sounded relieved, almost grateful, as if peace could be penciled into the calendar. Maybe this is good. Mom, maybe we can reset. I told him that would be nice. Isolde texted later, short and clipped. Let's keep it civil. No lawyers. I smiled at the screen. When people ask for no drama, they're usually the ones bringing it. Before the dinner, Vernon came by my condo with advice wrapped in caution. Ask, don't accuse, he said. Let them show you who they are. I nodded. I've been letting them do that for months. The plan was simple. Dinner would look like reconciliation, but play like revelation. I arrived early at the Langford estate, carrying a pecan pie as my peace offering. The foyer smelled of lemon polish and money. The second stair still creaked, a sound older than their marriage. I straightened a vase, pretending to admire the decor until my eyes landed on the wall. My husband's portrait was gone. In its place, a modern smear of color, soulless, expensive, meaningless. I stood there, heartbeat steady but cold. You know you've been erased, I said under my breath, when your picture comes down before your mail stops. I didn't cry. I walked into the dining room, smoothing the tablecloth, checking the plates. The room looked perfect and foreign all at once. I adjusted Amara's school photo on the sideboard and whispered, he's still her granddaddy, no matter what you hang up. When they arrived, Marcus kissed my cheek, awkward and stiff. Isolde's perfume hit first, sweet and heavy, like someone trying too hard to smell clean. This looks lovely, she said. Eyes scanning the table as if grading it, I poured sweet tea into glasses, my hand steady. Just keeping it simple, I said. Dinner began with small talk. Weather, work, Amara's science fair. I let them speak first, smiling where I had to. You remember when your father and I signed the papers for this house, I asked casually? Marcus nodded, half smiling. Isolde looked down, folding her napkin too tightly. Silence slipped between us. I've learned silence tells you more than words ever could. Then she said, we're really trying to move forward. Octavia, new season of life, new traditions. I cut my chicken slowly, replying, funny how the past keeps following, no matter how many coats of paint you put over it. Halfway through dinner, I set my fork down. Marcus, I want to ask you about my old checkbook. His head lifted, confused. What checkbook? Isolde froze just a heartbeat too long. The one tied to my business account, I said. I noticed withdrawals I didn't make. Around the time I sold my condo. The air thickened. See, people assume retirees stop paying attention. Truth is, I finally have time to read the fine print. Isolde jumped in, voice high and quick. We only use that for household things. You said it was fine. I met her eyes. I never said you could sign my name. Marcus turned pale. Wait, what's going on? I leaned back, calm but precise. What's going on is that money went missing, and my signature went places it shouldn't have. Vernon's helping me sort it out. Mom, you didn't have to, he started. We're talking now, I interrupted. The lawyers will just make sure someone writes it down this time. Isolde's tone cracked like thin ice. You're overreacting. This is a misunderstanding. That's the sound, I said quietly, of a story falling apart. I stood, folding my napkin neatly beside the plate. Enjoy the house while you can, I said. Next time we sit at this table, it might be in front of a judge. As I walked out, I stopped at the empty space where my husband's portrait once hung. The wall seemed to breathe in the silence. If they think they can erase a man by taking down his picture, I whispered, they don't know his wife very well. The morning after that dinner, I woke up feeling every one of my years. The sunlight slipped through the blinds in thin stripes, and the smell of coffee filled the small kitchen. My hands ached from tension, not age. At my age, you don't bounce back from a hard night. You unfold. I sat there replaying pieces of the evening, the checkbook, the missing portrait, my final words. I wondered if Marcus had trouble sleeping or if Isolde talked him out of his guilt before morning. Either way, I decided not to call. Sometimes silence does more than shouting ever could. So I watered my peace lily, sorted the mail, and wiped the counter. Life goes on, even when a war is brewing in the family. Around 10, the phone rang. It was Dot Hollins from church, her voice carrying that shaky kindness folks use when they don't know whether to comfort you or warn you. "Tavia, honey, I've been hearing some things." My chest tightened. Dot wasn't one for gossip. She went on carefully. Marcus and Isolde had been asking for prayers, saying I'd been confused lately and getting aggressive about money. I asked, "Did she say I threatened anyone?" Dot hesitated, then admitted she'd heard I raised my voice and scared the kids before I moved out. The lie sat heavy in the air. Amara was barely home during those weeks. I thanked Dot gently. "I'm fine. Baby, my mind's still mine. They're just mad I hired a lawyer." When I hung up, I stared at the quiet walls. First, they take your name off the papers. Then they start taking it off your reputation. 2 hours later came the knock. Firm, official. I opened the door to find a uniformed officer and a woman holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Langford? We received a report about your well-being." My mouth went dry, but I smiled politely. "Come on in, sugar. If we're going to talk about my mind, let's sit somewhere comfortable." They asked questions, date, location, who's the president, and I answered them with steady calm, adding a little humor just to make it sting less. "You want my blood type too, or just the truth?" The social worker looked embarrassed. I mentioned Vernon, my lawyer, explaining he was reviewing my husband's will. The officer nodded, clearly realizing this wasn't a crisis. It was a setup. Before leaving, the social worker lowered her voice. Sometimes family calls these in out of concern. Her eyes said what her mouth didn't. She knew exactly what kind of concern this was. By late afternoon, the mail arrived again. Inside the pile of coupons and bills sat a thick envelope from a law firm I didn't know. My stomach sank before I even opened it. The letter claimed Marcus and Isolde were concerned for my mental health and asked that I refrain from entering the Langford estate or contacting company employees. It even threatened a restraining order if I continued making unfounded accusations. Reading my own child's signature on that page hurt worse than the dinner. The thief calls the bank first, so their story's on record. That's all this was. I called Vernon right away, reading him every line. His voice stayed calm. "Good," he said. "Now we've got their version in writing. Easier to tear apart." We planned to meet the next morning with Renee, the bookkeeper. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with 3 papers spread out. The welfare check brochure, the lawyer's letter, and my husband's old note. 3 versions of me. One pitied, one accused, one remembered. "They want the world to see a crazy old woman chasing ghosts," I said softly. "But I see a paper trail with my name rubbed out." My heart ached for Marcus, for what he'd become. But pity doesn't win court cases. I wasn't begging to be let back in that house anymore. I was fighting to put my name back where it belonged. I left Vernon a voicemail before bed. Tomorrow, we stop defending and start attacking. Then I looked out at the Savannah skyline, the city lights blinking steady as heartbeat. "They had their turn telling folks who I am," I whispered. "Next chapter. They hear it from me." Vernon called that morning, his tone all business. "Marcus wants a family meeting at Riverstone," he said. "Says it's about clearing the air." I laughed softly. "If they want to talk about family, they'll see my face, not my lawyer's." He sighed. "Just be careful." I promised I would. People expect older women to play peacemakers, the glue holding everything together even when it cuts your hands. Not today. I laid out my outfit, a dark navy suit and low heels. Respectable. Not submissive. Into my purse went a folder of documents, the old deed copy, bank statements, proof of the forged checks before leaving. I paused by the window, watching the afternoon light slide across the sill. I'm not going to fight them, I said to myself. I'm going to remind them who taught them how to fight. I slipped my husband's old fountain pen into my bag. His handwriting built this family's foundation. Now mine would defend it. Riverstone looked the same from the outside, grand, manicured, empty. Inside, though, it felt colder. The air smelled of lemon polish and fear. The foyer's creak still greeted me, but the warmth was gone. A new photo hung where my husband's portrait once did. Marcus, Isolde, and Amara smiling in coordinated blues. No trace of me. When people crop a photo, I whispered, they crop their conscience too. Isolde met me in the doorway, her voice sugar slick. We're just glad you came calmly this time. I smiled faintly. Calm doesn't mean unarmed. Marcus lingered behind her, eyes darting like a boy who'd brought home a bad report card. Amara sat on the stairs, listening, too young to understand but old enough to feel the chill. We gathered in the dining room, the air thickened with false civility. Isolde began, her tone polished but sharp. We need to protect ourselves legally from these accusations. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a printed agreement. I'd withdraw my claims in exchange for a small monthly payment, hush money dressed as kindness. I let the silence stretch, then said, So you want me to sign my silence in ink I paid for? Marcus leaned forward, voice cracking. Mom, it's just to keep things simple. Simple, I repeated. That's what folks say when they're hoping you won't read the fine print. I opened my own folder and began laying out documents one by one, bank receipts, check copies. My name forged beside their initials. These don't look simple to me. Isolde's smile faltered, Marcus's face drained of color. I just came to clarify one more thing, I said, pulling a small recorder from my purse. I pressed play. The sound of Isolde's voice filled the room. If the old woman wants a war, we'll make her look senile before it starts. Marcus's head jerked up. You recorded that? No, I said evenly. Your aunt did. She thought I should hear what kind of war you were fighting. The recording continued, Isolde laughing about moving the money before the old bat notices. The color drained from her face. Marcus stood, voice shaking. You said that was just bookkeeping. I stayed seated. See, I didn't need to raise mine. The silence that followed felt like a verdict. Marcus finally spoke, voice breaking. Mom, I didn't know. I looked at him, calm and steady. You can't apologize your way out of a bank statement. Isolde shoved back her chair and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the new picture on the wall rattled. Amara's small face peeked from the stairs. Grandma? She whispered. I smiled gently. Don't let anyone rewrite who built your home, baby. I picked up my husband's pen from the table. Your father signed this house's first mortgage with this. I told Marcus. I'll use it to sign the truth. As I stepped outside, the cool March air felt cleaner than it had in months. My phone buzzed. Vernon's text. It's done. We move tomorrow. I looked back at the glowing windows of Riverstone, then said quietly, the night they planned to end my story was the night I started writing theirs. The morning of the hearing came cold and clear. I dressed before dawn, the sky still bruised with night. My navy suit hung just right, pressed and steady, the way I needed to feel inside. I clasped my simple pearl earrings, the kind my mother said made any woman look ready for business. My fingers trembled a little as I buttoned my jacket. But when I picked up my pen to sign my affidavit, my handwriting ran straight and strong. That steadiness meant something to me. I rode the city bus downtown. No chauffeur, no lawyer's car. If I can't walk into that courthouse by myself, I told the driver quietly, I don't need to be signing anything. The courthouse steps were crowded with strangers chasing their own kinds of justice. I paused, letting them rush by. Folks think the hardest part of aging is your knees, I thought. but it's really having to prove you're still the same person who raised everyone else. Vernon waited by the door, suit crisp, eyes calm. "Answer what's asked," he said, "and tell it like you're telling it to God." I nodded. That was all the speech I needed. Inside, the air smelled of paper, coffee, and nerves. Marcus and Isolde sat at their table with their lawyer, whispering like students caught cheating. I noticed the bailiff call my full name loud and flat. Octavia May Langford. And for a second, I almost didn't recognize it. It sounded like a charge instead of a name. I walked past the clerk who asked if I needed help to my seat. "No, baby, I got 2 good legs left," I said. Isolde didn't look at me. Marcus glanced once, then away. Their lawyer went first. Slick voice full of polite venom. He painted me as confused about complex finances, suggesting that family tension and age had clouded my memory. I sat still, hands folded, feeling the sting but not showing it. It was like listening to my own obituary while still breathing. When he finished, I lifted my chin higher, not lower. Then Vernon rose, his calm cutting sharper than anger. He started with facts, not feelings, bank statements, will copies, old property deeds. "We'll let the paper talk," he said. He compared signatures side by side, my neat, round cursive against the shaky forgery they'd used to take control. Even the judge frowned. When he played the recording of Isolde's voice from weeks before, her laughing about making me look senile before this starts, the whole room went still. Marcus shifted like he'd swallowed fire. "You recorded that?" he hissed. Vernon said nothing. He didn't have to. When my turn came, I stood. My knees ached but held. I spoke plain. "Judge, I might not know corporation talk, but I know bill paying. That house was bought with my stitches and his overtime. I told her I sold my condo to help my son, not because I forgot what money meant. Trust," I said, "ain't confusion. When they asked about my relationship with Marcus, I answered, I love my son. I don't trust his judgment. Those 2 things can sit in the same chair." After a short recess, the judge returned. My breath slowed as she spoke my name again, but this time like it belonged to something solid. She ruled I was competent and credible, that my ownership and assets were to be restored. My name was reinstated on the Langford estate, restitution ordered for stolen funds, and an investigation opened on the signatures. "For years," I whispered, "they said my name like an apology. Today it sounded like a fact." Outside, Vernon leaned close. "They mortgaged the house," he said quietly. "They'll have to sell now." I nodded slowly. "Funny," I murmured. "They tried to send me to a home. Now life's sending them one they didn't choose." But there was no gloating in it. Just the weight of irony landing where it belonged. That evening, back in my condo, I set the court order on the table beside my husband's pen. The room felt different, lighter but lonely. "Winning doesn't feel like fireworks," I told the silence. "It feels like your shoulders remembering how to drop." My phone buzzed once, then quieted. I stared out at the city lights until a soft knock pulled me back. I opened the door, and there stood Amara, clutching a small bag. "Grandma," she said, "can I stay here tonight?" I smiled and stepped aside. "Baby, the court gave me my house back on paper. You just gave me my home." That night, when Amara asked, "Grandma, can I stay here tonight?" I didn't answer right away. She stood in the doorway, clutching a small bag like she wasn't sure if she was welcome. "Come on in, baby," I said finally. Stepping aside, the condo was small. Futon, crocheted blanket, one-frame photo of her granddaddy smiling in his work boots. Nothing like the grand hallways of Riverstone, but it smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry. Not lemon polish and tension. She looked around, half curious, half relieved. "It's cozy," she said. "It's honest," I replied. "We ate leftover stew and biscuits I'd made 2 nights ago." She laughed when she spilled gravy on my tablecloth, and I let her. Later, she tried on one of my old T-shirts for pajamas, swimming in it, and I tied a satin scarf around her hair the way my mama did for me. When we sat on the couch, she whispered, "Mom and Dad been fighting all the time about money and you and everything." Her eyes shone wet. The house doesn't feel safe anymore. I held her hand and said, "A house can be pretty and still be ugly to live in." Before she fell asleep, she asked, "Are you going back now that it's yours again?" I smiled softly. "Baby, just because you win something back doesn't mean you have to keep it." The next morning, I watched her sleeping, the sunlight pooling across her braids. For the first time in months, I felt the future stretch wider than a courtroom. I sat with my coffee, reread the court order, and marked it with my pencil like a grocery list: ownership, restitution, authority. Then I called Vernon. "I don't want to live in that house," I told him. "I want to decide what happens to it, mine." He went quiet for a second, then said, "Now you're talking like the owner." We discussed options: sale, trust, reinvestment. "When you stop begging to be invited in," I said, "you realize you can own the door." We set a meeting for Friday, that afternoon. Marcus came by to pick up Amara. The condo suddenly felt too small for both our guilt. He started fast, eyes glassy. "Mom, I was under pressure. Isolde, she pushed me. I didn't think—" "Oh, you did." I cut in gently. "You thought I'd be quiet." His shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry. I didn't drag you into court," I said calmly. "Your signatures did." He nodded. Silent. I told him I wouldn't press charges if restitution stayed on schedule, and he kept his name off my affairs. When he asked if I'd move back to Riverstone, I shook my head. "I won't sleep in a place where I'm only welcome until the ink dries." His lips trembled. "Do you forgive me?" I met his eyes. "I forgive you enough not to see you in handcuffs, not enough to hand you my keys again." By Friday, Vernon and I sat across from each other, papers lined like chess pieces. I signed the order to sell Riverstone and place my share into a new trust, half for a modest home of my choosing, half for Amara's future. "The same pen that built that house," I said, holding my husband's fountain pen, "is the one that's freeing it." We added one last clause to my new will: a fund for seniors scammed by family, and a rule that no one could send me to a home without 2 doctors and my attorney signing off. Vernon smiled. "That's sharp." "They wanted to put me in a home to silence me," I said. "Instead, I built one that'll protect others." Weeks later, I sat on the porch of my new bungalow, sunlight bouncing off the fresh paint I chose myself. Smaller, humbler, but every inch earned. Amara's bike rattled down the sidewalk. Neighbors waved. Sometimes, I thought, the happiest endings look like a Tuesday. I remembered Isolde's old words: "If you won't go to a home, get out of my house," and whispered. Turns out, I didn't need either. I just needed my backbone. To anyone listening, I'd say, if somebody's loud enough to throw you out, be loud enough on paper to stand up for yourself. Your name isn't charity. It's proof. Marcus and I still talk, quietly, carefully. He's learning apology through action. I don't need more than that. They thought sending me to a home would be the end of my story. But this was the home I chose. That night, as the porch light flickered against the quiet street, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No name, just my old address written in Marcus's handwriting. Inside was a single photograph of Riverstone and a new deed transfer I hadn't signed. I stared at it, whispering, "What have you done now, son?"